So yeah, my teaching career was sort of not, I suppose, the most common route to getting into teaching. So I suppose the question, did I always want to be a teacher? The answer to that is no. um, but I found I've got quite an interesting story in that I'd always done well at school and enjoyed school. You know, I had no problems at all. But I actually found myself pregnant at 16 years old. So I had I'd done my GCSEs and had my son, and I'd just turned 17. So I was sort of 2 months into my sort of 17th year, if you like. So I suppose at that point in my life, I thought, you know, what are you going to do? You know, actually, are you going to, you know, fight the tide essentially of the kind of assumptions that are made around teenage parents, or are you going to sort of get back in it and see what you can do? I went back to college I went to college in the September when I would have been going to college anyway, and just sort of continued. And then I decided after college that I'd get a job basically because I needed money. I was a single parent, I was on my own. And I got a job as a teaching assistant in a school, and I was the youngest person they'd ever employed. And they were really, really wary about employing me. But I think they kind of just wanted to give me a go. And they were just like, kind of had this thing where they were like, right, we'll give you a go. And I was like, I promise I won't let you down. And I think that was basically my story being a teenage mum, was kind of then became my passion around trying to educate young people. And, you know, specifically, obviously, around things like sex education, relationship education, but also more widely to sort of get young people empowered. And, you know, even if they're in tricky situations like I found myself in, that actually, you know, you can do it, you know, you can find inspiration and you can be motivated and stuff. So I was basically working as a TA in the school, and the head teacher at the time, he called me into his office and he said, we want to fund you to do your degree and to do your teaching. And that's the story. So I ended up teaching English to start with, but then I never wanted to particularly do that. I always wanted to teach sort of like PSHE. Like at that time, I really wanted to teach citizenship. Had just come onto the curriculum, and I was like, this is me all over. Like as somebody who's like a real empath, I was like, God, I could see the power of like a subject like citizenship and kind of what it could do for a school. So yeah, that's my kind of career, and I fell nicely into teaching. Like I felt comfortable in my own skin as a teacher. So it's kind of interesting because now I look back and think I couldn't have done any other job, but it never occurred to me to be a teacher. So, you know, maybe it's fate, who knows. And when you're passionate as a teacher, you can create that. You can really engage with children and young people, and I think it's such a privilege to be a teacher, like to be shaping the lives of future generations. You know, and to get them excited and to feel, you know, empowered and safe in their educational space. If you could bottle up what working with kids can do for you, you'd be a millionaire, because there is something so, I mean, the job is tough as, don't get me wrong, but there is something incredible about, you know, that kid at the back of the class whose life is being changed by something that you're doing or saying or teaching. It's just, yeah, it's incredible, really. I was recently put into the top 70 women in tech to watch.
Wow.
And like globally, which is like pretty cool. And like all these kids were like, you were the best teacher. And I thought, oh, that's so nice that they felt so inspired, you know, that they still take the time to sort of remind me. And in fact, one of the girls, Facebook, messaged me and just said, I follow everything you're doing on Votes for Schools, and I just want to say, like, I'm so proud that you were my teacher. I think I had this really tough year 11 GCSE citizenship class, and in the school I worked in, they were set by ability, which is, you know, quite common practice in secondary schools. And quite often these kids are disenfranchised and disengaged, and citizenship kind of plays a part in being something that isn't scary to them. You can make it quite accessible, if you like. And one of the things you have to do in GCSE citizenship is actually be active. So you have to do something that demonstrates, and you kind of write it up about how you're actively being a good citizen. And these kids, there weren't many in the class, I'd say there's probably 10 of them. When they were kind of brainstorming, they said to me, like, what we'd really like to do is decorate your classroom and make it a real citizenship space, like really like make it international. I had these awful polystyrene square slats on my ceiling. They were like, we could pop them out and we could paint flags all across the ceiling, and like then all the younger years would love it, and they'd really, and I was like, I hadn't seen these kids so animated. They were just really like, they wanted to do it. And I just thought, right, I've got to make it happen. Like, the last thing you want is to say to children, look, we want you to be active. Oh no, but you can't do that. Oh no, and you mustn't do that. And oh, there's no money for that. So I went to the head at the time, who actually was probably the most inspirational leader that I've ever worked under. And he really valued citizenship, and he valued what I was bringing, if you like, in the classroom, and the sort of impact it was having in the school. And he went, yeah, absolutely. And here's a budget. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the kids came in at the weekend, and we all had like our old clothes on. And, you know, like you're thinking, this is going to go one way or the other. Either it's going to be brilliant, or I'm basically going to be attacked by pain and my room is going to be a mess. And I knew that wasn't going to be the case, because once you give kids that faith and that ownership, and you know, you trust them, they don't let you down, you know. So that's like, and they did decorate the room, and it was like the most amazing space. And of course then they left a legacy for all the other kids, which was amazing. Everything comes back to a couple of key things. Number one is, so in this country, politics doesn't represent the most vulnerable, the most disadvantaged people in our society. And the reason that it doesn't represent those people is because, unfortunately, those people are the ones that don't go out and vote. But if we want to make things more representative and democracy really do what it should, then we need to try and combat that political apathy. But that can't happen overnight. What we have to do is go, okay, people aren't voting, why are they not voting? And when you ask them why, they go, well, you know, it doesn't, you know, it's really got nothing to do with me. Oh, you know, no, politics isn't for me. Or, you know, it's Westminster and blue suits and it's not, you know, and I go, what? Like, politics is everything, dude. Like, it's everything. Like your mobile phone, everything we do, everything around us is governed by legislation and governed by politics. So you have, and I suppose it was understanding that these people aren't voting because they think politics is one thing, and actually it's not. It's relevant global issues that are happening every day in the world around us. So I kind of wanted to basically go back to grassroots and go back to kids and start making politics attractive and start making it relevant, age appropriate, and just on point, you know, like talking about TikTok, you know, talking about body image. These are all things that young people want to talk about, and they're all governed by politics. That's the reality. So the kind of passion for it was this desire to combat political apathy has to be traced all the way back to children having political conversations in schools, but making that political conversation really, really relevant, so they get passionate and they get energized. We work like a newspaper, so so the content goes out to the schools, and we're working on it the week before it goes out, so it's as current and as live as it can possibly be. The voting element is about actually being democratic. So rather than standing in front of a class and going, you know, today we're going to learn about democracy. Democracy is where you get a vote. What we're doing is saying, well, let's not talk about what democracy is. Let's be democratic. Let's have a debate, a discussion. Let's have a vote at the end of it. You know, let's develop all those skills that debate and discussion enhances, like empathy and tolerance and understanding and all of that stuff. And then, of course, we have to get that voice heard, because that's the piece about apathy. Like if we're asking children, like, I don't know, let me just think of a question really quickly. I know, should there be mixed gender football teams, as an example? You know, we then have to go to the FA, we have to share that information, and we have to get feedback for the kids, because that's all part of that cycle. The last thing you want is to ask them a question, to get them to have a voice on it and to vote and feel really empowered and knowledgeable. So then suddenly, like, it's gone into the ether and nobody wants, because that's what will create more apathy. So that's the kind of basically the premise. it's understanding like the pinch points. It's understanding that you want to get consistency and you want to get quality, but you also know that there's a lot of fear from the people that are delivering. So, and obviously the kids, it's about engaging them and using content that's cool and different and not like, you know, that encourages debate, but uses sources that are really, really on point, uses the latest artists, the latest sports people, you know, and really kind of brings the outdoor world into that classroom. I mean, I like questions that create real kind of moral dilemmas. Like we did a really good question around driverless cars before and actually that the feedback fed into the driverless cars legislation that was going through Parliament. And the reason I like topics like that is it challenges children. Like there's so many good reasons for driverless cars, but then somebody in the background is having to make an ethical call on what happens in a dangerous moment in that driverless car. And somebody has to pre-program that car to basically, if there's if there's a people carrier in front or there's a motorbike at the side, which way does it go to avoid a collision? Like, and somebody has to pre-program all of that. So morally and ethically, these kids are like, oh, God, driverless cars, it's brilliant, you know, lack of, you know, people won't be isolated. But at the same time, they're like, oh no, like if you have an accident in a car, it's instinct, you know, like it's in which way you turn, it's instinct, but somebody's going to have had to have gone through that process and programmed it. And so topics like that, where they really challenge themselves, like their whole values and like what they, you know, whether the good outweighs the bad, or any topic for me that's got an opportunity to change a child's mind, because it's one of the skills that we find really difficult as adults. We kind of like dig our heels in and we're like, no, this is what I think, it doesn't matter what you say, you will not sway me. And I kind of like, actually it's a skill that needs habitually developing. And I think so any topic where, and I've spoken to kids before that have gone, oh yeah, I've changed my mind loads of times, like I just think, oh, that's brilliant, because it's a skill that we all need to learn. I think Pango is brilliant. So I met Adam, oh God, probably 18 months ago now. And obviously he's a founder, a fellow ex-teacher, and you're already kind of connected, and you've got that thing where I'm obviously a few years ahead in the journey, and I'm like, look, anything I can do to help, like anything that I think is really good for schools, I will always help with. And I think, like, I look back at I look at some of the stuff that's out there and the content for teachers. I look at the bureaucracy and the lack of time that our teachers have today doing the job. And then I look at the children and what they deserve to get. And Pango is like the absolute nailed on choice, because it is like some of the best content providers out there that are experts in their field. I think I just loved the concept of it. I loved the way like when he talked to me about it, he said to me, well, like Spotify, and I just got it straight away. I just got it. It's quite rare that you come across, you know, people like Adam and companies like Pango that get it. And what they're providing is a genuine solution from a lived experience. Teachers need autonomy to take and pick what they want, but they also don't have any time. So it's just like the perfect mix, really. Pango, Adam, I, Toby, Earth Cubs, we all have a common shared goal, and that is to educate children. And we've all got missions and passions that we're particularly driven by, but ultimately we're here for all the right reasons. My favourite memory from my own school days, probably my friends, really. Drama, I loved drama, I loved performing. So yeah, I'd definitely say some of my drama performances in the school plays, you know, yeah, that's definitely probably my favourite memory from school. Definitely drama. I loved like RE, PSHE, even though it wasn't as well formed back when I was at school, but I loved the ability to have dialogue and conversation. And definitely PE, I loved PE as well. Probably the later years 10 and 11, because I think you've kind of got a really solid friendship group by then. Like girls are a bit more mature, so all of the kind of girly rubbish stuff has happened. You're all supportive of each other. So yeah, I'd probably definitely say the older years 10 and 11.